Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to the True North vlog. I know it's been a while. I hope you are able to now catch up with yourself and what's going on. And my invitation for you today is just to catch up with us as well. Find out a little bit about what we've been up to and what we've been doing. I know everyone wants to know where the military veterans bill has reached, and we are essentially at the point of almost getting published by the government printers, and once that happens it will be able to be read for the first time on the Senate floor, and then we shall take it from there. So today I'm coming to talk about the recent call to public participation by the Ministry of Defense. I'll keep turning to my left, your right, only for the purposes of reading from my laptop, just to make sure that I am able to represent the facts as they are, right? So the notice was basically made in the local newspapers, and it was an invitation for public participation for the Kenya Defence Forces Pensions, Gratuities, Officers and Service Members Regulation for 2021. Okay, so it is, I'll just read the ad. The Defence Council has pursuant to 304 of the Kenya Defence Forces Act developed the Pensions Regulations 2021. The draft regulations are intended to regulate the administration of pension and gratuities within the Defence Forces. The public is hereby invited to review and consider the draft regulations and submit comments, views, and memoranda as may be deemed appropriate, not later than Friday the 7th, 2021 at 11 a.m. The draft regulations are available on the ministry's website, which is www.mod.go.ke, for perusal and input. Views and memoranda can be submitted through any of the following methods. 1. Sent electronically through email. The email address is publicaffairs@mod.go.ke, or posted to the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Defense, Ulinzi House off Ledada Road, PO Box 40668, 00100, Nairobi. And the third option is to have it dropped off at the Ministry of Defense headquarters at Ulinzi House off Lenana Road. So I'll get right into what our memoranda bearing the views on the draft for the Kenya Defense Forces Pensions and Gratuities, Officers and Service Members Regulations 2021 is, right? So of course, we go ahead to talk about where we are getting the idea that we should actually draft the memoranda. I've just read it to you. So I'll start where it really matters. The regulations relate to matters of pension and gratuities for officers and service members of the Kenya Defence Forces, which matters are important to the members of True North Society and well within its objectives. True North is here. The Society, therefore, by means of this memorandum, wishes to raise for consideration various issues regarding the regulations, with hope that they will be taken into account before the final draft regulations are presented to the National Assembly. That's our prayer, essentially. Okay? So, the current regulations. The current operating regulations are the Armed Forces Pensions and Gratuities Officers and Service Members Regulations 1980, which is basically herein referred to as current regulations or the 1980 regulations. These regulations have been revised a number of times over the years through various legal notices. So I'll tell you what I found to be very interesting about this process, that it had to be explained for me to understand, and I want to explain to you guys so that you also understand that unlike other public officers, the pensions and gratuity in the military is actually not a matter that can be debated in parliament like other pension issues for other public officers, right? So the military has regulations. It's not an act of parliament per se, right? So we have that one for 1980, the one I've talked about. And then there is the 2017 one that was rejected by the Committee of Delegated Legislators in Parliament, right? So just for your information, just so you know where this process is going to go or is going. Okay, so I'll continue to read. An overhaul of the 1980 regulations was attempted through the Kenya Defence Forces Pensions and Gratuities Officers and Service Members Regulations 2017, hereinafter referred to as the annulled regulations or the 2017 regulations. The 2017 regulations sought to revoke the 1980 regulations and bring the regulation of pensions for armed forces in line with the Kenya Defence Forces Act number 25 of 2012. The regulations were, however, annulled by Parliament for reasons, among others, that they did not conform with the Constitution of Kenya 2010 by wrongly providing for pension and related benefits as a charge on the Consolidated Fund and for wrongly creating the Pensions Board and Pensions Appeal Board, which were not recognized under the Kenya Defence Forces Act. In the draft regulations, under Regulation 4, it is now provided that pensions, gratuities, and other allowances may be granted by the Defence Council with the concurrence of the National Treasury without stating that the same shall be a charge on the consolidated, as had earlier been stated in the 2017 regulations. Additionally, Regulations 18 and 36 establish the Pensions Assessment Committee and Pensions Appeals Committee, respectively, which conform with Section 304, 1, AA of the Kenya Defence Forces Act. The result of the annulment of the 2017 regulations is that the system of military pensions and gratuities is saddled with the 1980 regulations with all their myriad practical and legal shortfalls. It is then hoped that with contributions such are contained in this memorandum, the newly proposed regulations will not suffer the same fate as the 2017 regulations, and that there will be a reprieve in the eventual promulgation of modern, practical, and legally compliant regulations that address the pressing pensions and gratuities need of the officers and service members. I continue. Here below then are some of the matters provided for the regulations that the True North Society wishes to highlight for consideration. Okay, so we begin. The operative starting date, right? Regulation 2 provides that the regulations, open quote, shall apply to all claims arising after 1st July 1978 and provided that no additional benefits shall accrue to service personnel by virtue of amendments herein. This provision does not appear in the 1980 regulations, nor the 2017 annulled regulations. The provision is extended to Regulation 46 that provides an officer entitled to a pension, gratuity, or allowance under the current 1980 regulations to be revoked shall be deemed entitled under the new regulations, provided that no additional benefits shall accrue to service personnel by virtue of amendments, close quote, in the new regulations. It is noteworthy that the current 1980 regulations give the option for officers and service members entitled under the outgoing regulations the option to choose to be paid their pension, gratuity, or allowance under the outgoing regulations. Whereas it is conceivable that concluded awards and decisions made under the current regulations should not be reopened under the new regulations, under the principle that laws should generally not apply retroactively, Regulation 2, as drafted, will lock out the application of the new regulations to claims made after. By relating to retirement, disablement, and death arising before promulgation of the new regulations. Let's talk about pension as a right. Regulation 6 is titled Pension is not a right. This regulation expressly states that no officer or service member shall have an absolute right to compensation for past services or pension, gratuity, or other allowance. The reason for this definitive statement is not easily discernible, even though what immediately follows the denial of the notion of the right may be indicative of the purpose to be served that, open quote, nor shall anything in these regulations affect the right of the Defense Counsel to terminate the commission of any officer or the commander to discharge or dismiss a service member at any time without compensation except disability pension where applicable. Further, that an officer or service member sentenced to dismissal by court-martial or commanding officer shall not be entitled to pension, gratuity, or any other allowance except disability pension where applicable. It would appear that the reason for stating that pension and other related benefits are not an absolute right is to disabuse the notion that those whose services are terminated without compensation have residual rights of pension and other related benefits. The only exception provided is disability pension. Section 244 of the KDF Act provides that pensions and gratuities for officers and service members proceeds to say that upon dismissal of an officer or service member under the Act, his or her pension or gratuity benefits may be withheld, reduced, or suspended by the Defense Counsel with the concurrence of the Public Service Commission. There does not seem to be express provisions under the law for denial of pensions and related benefits as punishment for offenses or as a consequence of termination of commission or dismissal. Donation of this blank power to the Defense Counsel appears unanchored and arbitrary. In any event, it should not be left to regulations to exceed the contemplation of the Act by providing for further punishment, which the parent Act did not expressly provide. The general principle under Regulation 6 that pensions and related benefits are not a right finds expression in the following. Regulation 7 provides for suspension of pension and related benefits on employment by foreign power.